Hello and welcome back to 1874. It's time for a match preview show, another Champions League day as Aston Villa take on Bologna at Villa Park tomorrow, Tuesday. I'm joined by the Athletics Aston Villa correspondent Jacob Tanswell to talk through this match preview and look at Bologna and look at Villa ahead of that tie. This show is sponsored by Luke Roper, and you'll see on the screen at the bottom there, if you're watching via YouTube, that you'll get 20% off if you use the code TVV20. It's 20% off everything, so treat yourself to some Luke gear. If you have the finance, use our code, you'll get 20% off. We get a tiny little kickback as well, which is always very helpful for the channel. Jacob, how are you?
Yeah, doing well, thank you. It feels like a really quick turnaround, doesn't it, after the Fulham game? Because obviously you'd expect this type of game to be on a Wednesday, but Tuesday just hurries everything up a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, quick for me because I've already done a pod with Greg this morning looking back at the Fulham game, and then I swiftly realised that I needed to do a match preview show as well. Sam Bates says in the live chat, two live shows in one day. Aren't we lucky? The laughter emoji does take away a little bit from the seriousness of that comment. I'm not sure if Sam Bates does think that they're lucky or not. Jacob, you weren't at the press conference today, but Emery and Matty Cash have spoken to the media. I'm not sure we learned a massive amount because the European journalists do tend to ask the same kind of questions in these press conferences. They're just on the press conference, though, from Matty Cash's point of view, he spoke about being on the bench for that Bayern game. I don't think he was ever going to be able to play any minutes in that game. He just was 12 subs, isn't it? So he just wanted to be part of the occasion because he's waited for so long and, played a massive part in Villa getting as far as they have and getting to play Champions League football. He'll be hoping to make his Champions League debut.
Yeah, he will. Just a quick explain on how European press conferences work, because I think some people might find that quite interesting. For Premier League and FA Cup and Carabao Cup, you have the broadcast section, which are quotes that are ready to go. They're from Sky, Premier League Productions, local radio, and then we obviously have the written embargo, which is obviously for 30:30. That's how Premier League works. In Champions League and European, it's slightly different. It's basically an all-in, so as many people can ask questions, and they're quotes that are ready to go now. I think you probably have one question two at most you can ask Emery. So from my perspective, to get any real detail, you probably need 2, 3, 4. But those type of press conferences you wait for quite a more controlled, and they're quite they're for the broader audience, basically. So, that's why you probably don't expect much from Emery. Obviously, with European games, you do have players that do speak as well, like Matty Cash. And for Cash, I think it would be a fantastic achievement, really, to feature in a Champions League game because, he's been written off a lot of times. He's the type of guy that's, some people might think he's overachieving, but I think he's really still important to how Aston Villa are, especially with the shortage of right backs and how he's still there. He's still up in his level to cope with Emery's demands. And I thought he had, apart from the handball against Fulham, I thought he's pretty sound and pretty sharp. And to come and recover as quickly as he did after a hamstring injury, for a player like him, you need to rely on the sharp burst of acceleration. You saw with Alex Moreno how many issues he had. I think it's really good, and he's going to be very proud, and his family can be very proud when he plays tomorrow night.
Yeah, his family, big family gathering every time Villa play. They have all the Cash family are always at every game, pretty much. In fairness, so I'm sure they'll enjoy. I mean, I've watched him do some tremendous things over the last few years, like making it to the Premier League, playing in a World Cup in Qatar. They can now tick off Champions League off the list because I assume, as he did the press conference, that he's probably going to play tomorrow. Yeah. Matty Cash, would I be assuming right? Obviously, Ezri Konsa was on the bench at the weekend. You'd expect him to come back in. A little bit of rotation now. I assume Carlos might drop out, even though he's done really well in the last few years.
Emery said after the game on Saturday that some of the players that didn't play today will play on Tuesday because rotation, managing the minutes, and for a guy like Diego Carlos, who he's been fantastic, but he is quite physically fragile, isn't he? Such a short turnaround is probably not best for him. So I would presume that Matty Cash would play right back and Ezri Konsa at centre back, but like we said on the day of the Bayern Munich game, you get wind of certain selections that catch your eye, a little bit like Jaden Philogene the other day. So I think there's a few selection dilemmas.
Go on then. Any other changes you think will come in? Greg was heavily mooting on this morning's podcast. Go back and watch the podcast. Looking back at the Fulham game if you haven't watched it or listened to it yet. He said he didn't, but I thought he was heavily alluding that be one that John Duran starts your favourite player in world football.
That's news to me. That would be absolutely fantastic. I think if he plays, then I will be very excited. And I'll quickly get on the phone to my editor saying, "Do you want another John Duran piece tonight?" I wouldn't be surprised if Philogene plays. I think there's a question mark about Leon Bailey. He doesn't look. I don't know what you think, Dan. I'm sure you covered it this morning. He does not look like the player anymore.
Not ready.
I think Philogene comes in. I wouldn't be surprised if Russ Barkley comes in, but I think Onana and Tillemans are doing better. And the question is about John McGinn as well, whether he starts. Because he's obviously came on the other day. He's still easing his way back in after a type of injury that requires that. So I think there will be a few changes, but if John Duran starts, wouldn't be surprising, but at the same time, it'll be really fun.
I keep mooting changes and they keep not happening, so I'm a bit reluctant to do it. But at some point, he will have to change. Duran will have to start either a Premier League game or a Champions League game at some point. Maatsen will have to start a game at left back in the Premier League or the Champions League at some point. These things are going to happen. But Bologna, they're not doing great in Serie A. They've only won one game so far, drawn an awful lot of games, drew again at the weekend. This is a team that have had a lot of upheaval in the summer. They've lost their manager to Juventus. They've lost a lot of players as well. So they're in a little in Italiano. They've got a manager that's got good, decent European pedigree because he's got to the Euro Conference League final 2 years in a row with Fiorentina, and he now finds himself in the Champions League at Bologna. But they gave Liverpool a decent game a few weeks back. So I think it could be a game for rotation, but don't get that confused with the fact that these are mugs, because they're not at all.
No, they're very tactically sound. You saw that last season. I know they've not quite got going under Italiano yet, but they kept 17 clean sheets, I think, last year, only behind Inter Milan in terms of their home form as well. So they've got this level of consistency where they can grind out results. They don't lose many, like you say. There's been a lot of draws this season. I think a big impact is obviously losing the manager, Thiago Motta. Italiano is a lot more direct in terms of they play really quite quickly vertically, and on transition, I think they're going to cause a huge issue. Of course, they haven't got the individual star quality of Villa like they had last season because Calafiori, Xerxes are not there anymore. But they are a team that will get the ball forward quickly. And I think I was reading today that behind Final, they've made the most pressures in the attacking half as well. So they like to press high. They like to be aggressive. And I think if you are going to make changes, those coming in needs to be ready from the off, really, because you don't want them to get caught out. You don't want another situation with Olympiacos where Villa fall behind early and you're playing catch up for the rest of the game and it becomes a real just panicked evening. You need to make sure that the team is settled. And I think there'll be some players like a Jacob Ramsey or Morgan Rogers who you think, do you want to keep him in for this game? Because Ramsey's injury record, Rogers played a lot of minutes, or do you think let's hold him back and then ease them way into it, maybe on the hour mark or ready for the Bournemouth game?
Yeah, I mean, if I was have to guess, which I'm terrible at doing, as we've discovered in every match preview show so far, I do feel like McGinn might come in on the left.
Yeah,
for Ramsey. I do feel like Philogene might start instead of Bailey. I keep predicting that Maatsen will play and Duran will play at some point, so I'm not going to even bother guessing what's happening with those two at this point. But that on the flanks, Philogene and McGinn, I just feel like Philogene showed that he can be quite tactically diligent in that Bayern Munich game. It may well be needed at certain times. Again, he's obviously going to be missing at the weekend anyway. Yeah. Bailey is not quite there at the moment. Greg and I discussed that on the show this morning, and just for John McGinn, a Champions League game at Villa Park, he missed the first one. It just Ramsey's injury record. It just feels like maybe it's one that he might come in and play on the left. Because if Emery said there's going to be changes, then there's probably going to be changes.
Exactly. I think John McGinn's an obvious one, really. But at the same time, he's only just coming back from the hamstring issue. You don't want to overload him. I think it'd be quite clever if you are going to bring Ian Maatsen in to have John McGinn just ahead of him, because I think obviously McGinn's defensively very diligent. He can almost talk Maatsen through the game as well. I think Philogene, like you say, I really want to see a lot more from him in 1v1 areas. I think he's done really well. I think he's really quite calm, safe on the ball. But I think he's got a lot more to him. If you saw the clips from Hull last year, he was playing with this arrogant back heels, And there's a little shot he had over the bar at Fulham where he just dinked his body so quickly and got a shot off. It went over the bar, but I thought that's the type of sharpness in around the box, the type of risk-taking that I want to see. So I'd love him to start from the off. I think he's playing within himself, but still quite good. I think he can get to that next level quite immediately. So I think he'll come in, McGinn will come in. And then, that question mark of who's up top.
I mean, I've just remembered even that I thought Jack was quite enthusiastic about Philogene there, isn't he? And I've just remembered that you interviewed him last season. So you probably you will have a soft spot for him, won't you? Because you went to see him last season.
I drove all the way to Hull about 5:30 in the morning to see Philip Jean, and I've spoken to a few times. He's not the loudest talker, but I think it's great to see a guy like him who's had to do it the hard way. He didn't sign with Villa till in the later teens. He got rejected by like a Southampton, Brentford, these teams. It's for him to basically be a kid that just loves playing football, playing in the Champions League, and to see his face when he was smiling and very quiet after the Bayern Munich game. It was really good to see.
Yeah, we've got a couple of contrasting opinions in the live chat. We've got Tom here who's saying Watkins starts, in my opinion. I think I'd probably go along with that, which ultimately means John Duran will start this one. And then Agent Cooper saying we don't want to upset John Duran, so I feel like Unai has to start him at some point. Home to Bologna is an obvious choice. The big question is, does he start with Watkins or instead of him? I mean, there's no chance of him playing with him on this one. I don't think, Jacob. But I don't think I've spoken to you since Duran signed his new contract. I probably have spoken to you, but I don't think we've done a show together since John Duran signed that new contract. So, he wouldn't have signed that contract if he wasn't getting assurances that he's going to be starting games at some point. So there is a chance for this one, I guess.
I think we have to. Have we not done a show about talking about Duran? I think we have.
Maybe we did.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like we said earlier, Emery promised him at the start of the season that he'll be getting more minutes off the bench. He's coming on a lot on the out mark now, isn't he? And I think there'll be points with this season where he'll feel I should be starting this game. But my question for this game is, I think Watkins is stylistically better than Duran for this game. It might be completely unwashed and it'll be proven to be stupid. But I think the Bournemouth game, the way they press, how they go man for man, I think Duran would be fantastic in that type of game, really, compared to Bologna, who I think will be a little bit more pragmatic, hit on a counter attack through transitions, etc. But at some point, like you say, Duran's got to start a game, hasn't he? Because Watkins can't play forever. He had a real rushed pre-season, similarly to Duran, and he's played a lot of minutes, and he's played a lot of minutes generally since Emery took over. So at some point, he'll need to come out, and Duran's going to start. But equally, I agree with you. I don't think he'll start with Watkins. Equally, Duran hasn't proven to himself to be a great starter, has he?
No.
In the few times he's played.
I mean, there is the little issue of there's a Carabao Cup game on the horizon, which means he's going to start that game. So that's a start coming up, isn't it? So it's almost like you can play Watkins Tuesday, Saturday, because you know that Duran's going to play that game. And in fairness, Watkins is one of the best strikers in Europe and does it from the start every single time. He's in a good run of scoring form from the start. So when he's on one of those runs, you don't really want to take him out.
No, and he is seen as one of the most professional workers, most robust workers at Aston Villa as well. And you're right in saying he'll probably have a few days off after weekend, because he'll probably just want to be included in the squad for the Palace game. It's similar to Wickham. He actually went on holiday for a few days to Monaco. Didn't train for 2-3 days leading up to the Wickham game, so obviously Duran will start that game, and he can easily play 3 games in a week, Watkins, and he's not actually playing a lot, is he? He's not playing full games at the moment. He's playing an hour 65 minutes, so he's relatively fresh.
Yeah, I mean, Games Don says here, and I agree with it, we shouldn't take Bologna for granted. It'll be a tough game. That's the thing, isn't it? Because we've played the kind of pedigree tie that we've got at Villa Park against Bayern Munich and won 1-0. We obviously won our first game as well away at Young Boys. But this is huge, because it gives you a great chance to pretty much guarantee that you're going to be in that top 24 if you win again tomorrow night. And for Villa to win their first 3 Champions League games, in some ways, this game will actually be tougher than the Bayern Munich game, I think, because there's probably less expectation in the Bayern game. Now there's an expectation that Villa just go and beat this team. But we saw in the Conference League last season, you come up against the teams that are maybe lesser fancied, lesser names, but they know what they're doing, and Bologna will be exactly the same.
Yeah, and subconsciously, this is not Bayern Munich. So I think there was a bit of a come down for the Man United game, wasn't there? The high of the Bayern Munich game, and then you playing Man United, and you couldn't quite get up to that intensity, that atmosphere. I think this is going to be a difficult game, and it's going to be one of those games where there'll be long periods of impasse where not much is particularly happening. The crowd might go a little bit quiet, and like you say, Zrinski last year was one of those games where people just expected Villa to rock up and win, and it was a pretty long slog. Villa didn't win until the final few minutes. So I think if Villa get an early goal, I think they'll be absolutely fine. But you just feel like Bologna can really make life frustrating, and they can hit on the counter, and they can really make you run towards your own goal, and that's the type of thing you don't want.
Yeah, I mean, and there will be a Villa player making their Villa Park debut tomorrow night. We're expecting Iling. I'm not sure I'm saying that right anymore because he hasn't played for us. I'm not 100% sure on the pronunciation of his name. Hopefully, you know, it's either Eiling Junior or Ealing Junior, or I've got both of them completely wrong. But you would expect him to be starting tomorrow night.
Well, he's had an injury, so
okay, then you wouldn't be expecting him to
and
start.
he's not actually started a game yet. I've actually got a big piece on him coming up Tuesday morning. Which what was funny is that I completed it in when he signed, and it's been on the shelf basically. And when we reported first that he would be potentially going on loan, and my head was in my hands thinking this is never going to see the light of day. As it turns out, fantastic news. Villa have got Bologna, which means it can go out. And Iling Junior is the type of guy that he needs at home. He's played in multiple positions. He came to Villa under the full illusion that he would be part of the Villa squad this season, play a few games. So I think it might have, understandably taken him aback that he's having to go back to Italy, where he left, to play some games. And he's not, started a game yet. He scored a really good goal on his debut.
Yeah, he did.
And what's actually funny is that I was in Southampton a couple of weeks ago, and England under 21s were staying at the hotel I was in, and I bumped into Iling Junior in the lift. And he was the most polite. He almost said sorry for getting in the lift and getting off at a different floor to me. He was very polite, very nice guy. And I don't want Bologna to win, but I hope he does well.
I mean, it's good to hear that people are polite. I do like to hear stuff like that. Just on the subject of the article that you've got on the shelf, is that one of those ones where if you didn't tell your boss about it, this has come up and you could have kept it back, and then you wouldn't have to do any work this week because you could say you're working on it and then release it. But that doesn't strike me as the kind of thing you would do. That would more be the kind of thing that I would do.
Do you know what? In hindsight, I probably should have done that, but it's been going on for so long. Yeah, we've been speaking about it since he signed. I drove to Islington to his first pitch where he played football for the first time, spoke to his old coaches, and it's kind of written for him to be an Aston Villa player. So over the last couple of days, I've kind of tweaked it to make sure, to update it to him being in a Bologna shirt. But luckily there is, because obviously the piece is going out tomorrow. There is less work for me to do this week.
I do like when the Athletic goes a little bit niche and does those like visits. Like
I love them. I love them so much.
It could be one like we visited the first ice cream parlour Iling Junior went to when he joined Juventus to see what that was like. I like it when they go down that route.
I love it as well. Like I've done a few. I did one on Tina Livramento when I was coming to Slampton. I spent a day just following Esri Consig, driving to all his schools where I used to play. I did that last year, and it doesn't feel like work because all you're doing is simply going to these parks, speaking to his old coaches, his old teachers, his old schoolmates. But it's really enjoyable, and I think that's the type of journalism that we can do because you haven't got deadlines. You can write as much as you want, obviously within reason, without it being waffle, and people can just see the nicer sides of footballers.
Yeah, I mean, before we go as well, let's give a shout out to your article that came out this morning about Luca Dean. Enjoyable read. That was one of the first things I did this morning when I got up. He had a great game at the weekend, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. I think Luca Dean's been absolutely fantastic. Really consistent for a season and a bit now. I think towards the end of last season he was kind of flagging, but he's come back so strong. And Ian Matson can't get in at the moment, can he? So it's full testament to him that he's back in the French squad and his professionalism as well. And he's really won Emery over. Emery was extremely interesting on him when I asked him about him last Friday.
Yeah, I mean, we had Connor on last week, and I told a story about a player that there was a time where I was critical of them a few times on videos, and that they started liking my tweets. A few people suggesting that it might have been Luca Dean. I'm not going to confirm or deny this, but if it was Luca Dean, we've gone right around the houses because got the big retweet off Luca Dean after the game on Saturday.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, big retweet.
Does he follow you?
No, he doesn't. But I obviously tagged him in the tweet saying how good he was, and we went around there, and he got the big retweet out for me. So yeah, well done to Luca.
I'm not. All I say is I don't think it's him running.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you, Jacob. Ruin the story.
But it's still nice either way, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always. I'm like a child that gets excited when a Villa player, like if I see a Villa player, if they retweet, if they don't reply to DMs and stuff, I always someone that gets very excited about stuff like that still. So yeah, Luca Dean, go and read Jacob's article if you haven't done already, and subscribe to The Athletic to read all of Jacob's pieces as well, because he's a very good journalist, as I'm sure you've realised when he comes on this show and speaks about football. He writes just as well. Anything else you want to talk about before we go, Jacob?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just been really quite a good week. As obviously we've got the international break, another one coming up in November, but I think past that we hopefully be doing a lot more of these podcasts regularly, and also games flowing as well.
Yeah, we're gonna try and get you on once a week now, aren't we, Jacob? We've been in talks around that. We did one a few weeks ago about a random topic like Kamara and Mings. Where do they fit back in? I think we're going to go down that route and do those kind of videos once a week. So Jacob, in fairness, he's already on this channel a fair bit. You're going to see him even more now because we're going to go once a week. Be difficult to do this week because there's so many games, but from next week we'll go once a week, and me and Jacob will delve into a topic every single week from the press box. Right, thank you very much for coming on today, Jacob. If you've watched, thank you as well. Thank you for those that interact with us live. Some of you have been on twice today, so I don't know what you do some work. I mean, why are you able to come on and interact with us twice in a day? If you're listening via audio, do all the things that I bang on about every single week. And if you're watching on YouTube, give this video a like. Let's try and get to 500 likes. If we don't get to 500 likes, then Villa will not win tomorrow night. So it's in your interests to hit that thumbs up and give us a like. Probably have to do a video at some point after the Bologna game as well, I would guess, to talk about that. So yeah, I'll try and look at my schedule, and I've got a busy day on Wednesday. Try and work that out and do a video. I nearly knocked my microphone over right at the death of the video as well. But yeah, thank you ever so much to everyone who's been involved. Thank you to Jacob again. Thank you to Luke Roper for sponsoring. For those of you that are going tomorrow night, Jacob and I will see you there. And as ever, up the Villa.